Welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week we will discuss tools, tips, and ways to radiate your best life ever, interviewing practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate? Hello, welcome back to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Today I am joined by Tim Carson, who is the head of the Liminality Project. The curator of the Liminality Project. In addition to holding a master's degree in education and a master's degree in theology, his doctoral research and dissertation focused on liminality, which we're going to learn more about. And following many years serving as a parish pastor, Tim continues to write, edit, blog, and facilitate groups and seminars focused on liminality and work with people making life's great passages. Tim works with individuals as an EFT practitioner, which is emotional freedom technique, and matrix re-imprinting practitioner, which I need to know more about. Hello, do I call you Dr. Tim or Tim?
Just call me Tim.
Okay. All right, Tim. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Such a pleasure and such a beautiful day, too.
Oh, it's a gorgeous day here in Kansas City. I hope it is there in Columbia, too.
It is.
So you're based in Columbia, Missouri, of course, and you are a professor at Missouri University?
In the Honors College of the University of Missouri.
Wonderful. MU.
Right. So within the university, there's an honors college. So about 2,500 students within the whole student body of 30,000 or so. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's a big university.
It is.
And you teach liminality.
I do. I teach liminality seminars, and one of the courses I'm teaching right now is liminality and literature. And so we're plunging into the many examples of liminality as found in very liminal works of literature. And
liminality being the place between.
The place between, right.
That's a good way to describe it?
Yeah. So life is constructed of a series of passages. Mm-hmm. And as we cross these many passages, the domain that we find on the other side is this uncertain, ambiguous, swimmy terrain where we've not been before. It's full of uncertainty, and yet it is full of all kinds of potential. There's much to be discovered there. And so we remake ourselves every time we cross through this domain. And there are as many different kinds of liminality as there are people. There's personal liminality, there's social liminality. Passing through a pandemic is a form of liminality. Right. We used to have what was the structure of life, which was our familiar life. It's what we knew. It was our common life. And then we crossed a certain threshold. And when we crossed the threshold, we entered this whole new unknown territory of pandemic. And it's liminality is such is that you don't know what your destination is going to be. Not exactly. You have hopes for what that will be, and you discover new things. But what you create on the other side of the liminal passage is going to be different than what you experienced before you crossed into it. And that's good in many respects, because we don't want to just go back to the past the way it was. There's a lot of the bad old world we don't want to take forward. We want to recreate it all the time, and we want to recreate ourselves all the time.
Right. Oh, no, that's a wonderful thing. And so these rites of passages, how do you work with the liminality there and the between places?
Well, usually when we talk about rites of passage, those are the prescribed rites that cultural groups, religious groups would use to transport people from one state of being to another. And so, the most common one we think of is coming of age rituals, in which one moves from childhood to adulthood. And in the kind of ancient agrarian pre-industrial societies, those were tightly prescribed and ritualized, surrounded by ceremony and tribal elders. And this enabled the persons who were making the passage and the tribe itself to make these passages with the greatest safety they could, because liminal passages are always dangerous. There's a kind of death and rebirth that takes place. And as one passes through kind of the birth canal into the next stage of life, things can happen. So all of these rites of passage are there to usher a person into that. And so if one is, for instance, Roman Catholic, the rites of confirmation are going to be very important as one passes into a fully owned faith in adulthood. Or if you're Jewish, bar mitzvahs or bat mitzvahs serve the same kind of function.
Mm-hmm. And so what do we learn?
But some of course, many of those are not right. Many of them are not strictly rites of passage because they're not planned. And so I'm thinking about the Joplin tornado.
Okay.
My brother lives in Joplin. And remember when that tornado tore through Joplin and just ripped a pathway a mile wide through the entire city. That was not a rite of passage as such, because there was nothing planned about it, nothing designed to transport a person from here to there. What it did, though, is everyone crossed the threshold. There was this social liminality that took place. And in the middle of all that, people discovered a whole lot of things. They discovered hope. They discovered the bonds of community. They discovered how to rebuild after tragedy. They discovered reserves of strength they didn't know they had. Those were not necessarily rites of passage, but all of those things took place in that liminal domain after they crossed that threshold. Right.
So the liminality would be the journey from the transition period from one to the next.
Right. Well, it would be like the pathway that you're walking during the journey. It would be the time and place that you have to traverse. It's like making a sea journey, and you leave the shore and you're at sea. And so that is the liminality, being at sea. And you're making this great voyage to wherever you happen to be sailing. And that is the liminality, along with all of the pleasant breezes and the storms that come in that region and in that time.
Right. Oh, you froze.
The unusual thing about liminal space is that time changes. And so what seemed to be passing along quickly slows down. Sometimes time stops as we're going. Think about the pandemic. Sometimes it seems to absolutely creep along. It's just like this is this indefinite period of time, every day stretching on. And then sometimes we kind of wake up and we say, oh my gosh, where'd the month go? Where did I lose that month? What happened to it? Where did it go? And so time is kind of flexing and it's very uncertain because all of the old signposts and all the kind of signs of structure we used to know have been erased and they're gone. Yeah. So that's why it works on people psychologically. That's one of the reasons the pandemic has been so difficult emotionally for people. Mm-hmm. They don't know where they stand and they don't know what time it is. Right. They don't know when they are. It's not only where I am and who I am. Those questions are real. Who I am, the identity questions are real, but it's also when am I? Mm-hmm. How is time passing?
Yeah, I found myself having to rely on looking at my phone or my computer to know what day it was.
I did, I did that often. I mean, what day is it? I don't know. It seems a lot like yesterday and probably like tomorrow.
Who knows anymore? And so,
And of course,
mhm,
we mentioned identity.
right.
Identity is a key thing too. That is the thing that is being remade in the middle of liminality also. All of the great myths of the world have great passage stories in them. And the hero or the heroine of those great passage stories are being remade. And
Mm,
so we're being remade as we pass through this.
right. Right.
And we're, oftentimes in the great stories from the great traditions, a person is being stripped of what was. They are being stripped down to their essentials, and
Yes.
they're rebuilding after that kind of stripping down and discovering what is needed and necessary, abandoning all that is extraneous and unnecessary, letting it go. And sometimes that means relationships. I have discovered lots of my acquaintances and friends who have made important personal transitions in the pandemic.
Oh, yes.
There's been lots of time to think, lots of time to ponder. Who am I? Who do I want to be? Where do I want to go? How much time do I have to do it?
Mm-hmm.
And so people are making those shifts, and they're doing it right in the middle of that, or they're preparing to do it.
Right. Yes, they are. Um, it's been a big transition for a lot of people. And so, the study of liminality, like why study it? What do we have to learn or gain from it?
Right. Well, that's a really good question. Liminality existed long before it was a discipline. I mean,
Right.
it's kind of built into the fabric of existence. From the most ancient of our texts and literature, we just have story after story. So actually, the knowledge of what it is, so that we can describe it with a kind of language, gives us handles every to not only for ourselves but to help others make those passages every time they come, and they come all the time. And so what we're doing is we're equipping people with a language. It's a language to describe experience. And if you can describe your experience, you're halfway there. And one of my enjoyable experiences that happens all the time is I'll get into a conversation and someone will say, "Oh, what do you do? What do you teach? Or what do you focus on? What do you write?" And I say, "Well, I talk about liminality." And the same question always, "Lima what? What's liminality?" And so after I give a simple description, the simplest of description, people say inevitably, "Oh, that I know what you mean," because they've experienced it.
Of
They've
course.
experienced it in their own life. They've experienced it in their society. Every time that we play that old game, where were you when? Where were you when the Twin Towers fell?
Right.
Where were you when the Capitol was sieged? Where were you when? And people know exactly where they were, because every time that someone gives a reply or an answer to that, they're describing a threshold that ushered us into liminality.
Yeah.
They know exactly what liminality is. All they need is a language to describe it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there is quite a bit in that transition in the liminality. And you talked about teaching literature in liminality in literature, and I'm thinking of Bildungsromans. So the novel of the younger person who goes through a bunch of trials and tribulations, and they come out on the other side. right? So literature is full of this. So is this the type of thing that you're talking about?
Right. In fact, you could say that liminality is what propels literature forward.
I would agree.
Whether we're talking about the Odyssey,
Yes, I was
or
just
we're
thinking of the
talking,
Odyssey.
or we're talking about the life of Pi.
Exactly.
Whatever, whether it be ancient or modern, that tends to be the engine. That engine of passing the threshold and then being in the horns of a dilemma and trying to figure it out and suffering in the meantime and being remade. That's just this recurring pattern. And it happens in our psychological, spiritual life too.
How so?
You can think of the passages that we make on the outside are reflected with an inner passage. So let's say we had a way that we understood the world to be. That was our preliminal understanding of life. And something comes along and it disrupts that notion that we have of the world. Some kind of cognitive dissonance is inserted. And suddenly the world that we thought we had, we realize that we don't have anymore. And so we have to this is where learning and liminality comes to the fore so powerfully. We have to make an interior shift. And that interior shift means crossing a threshold from what we thought we knew to uncertainty and unknowing to a new kind of knowing. So we're kind of layering that. We move to a new or a different level. So we have these powerful shifts that take place. And sometimes they're autonomous. They're not necessarily related to outside shifts. You could have an interior, like say, the classic midlife passage, midlife crisis. It's not necessarily based on what's happening outside, though it can be connected to that. But we, in an interior kind of way, come to a moment in our life where we say, I have a shelf life. The first half is over. It's halftime. Do I want to live the second half like I lived my first half? What kind of shifts what do I value? Who am I? What do I want to live for? How do I have to remake myself? And so these kind of things are taking place on the inside. And the best thing we could say when a person comes to those powerful interior shifts where we cross certain thresholds is that we will go to the deeper places where we have not gone before, or perhaps we have not visited in a long time. And we will try to reconnect with kind of the powerful forces of being down there in the basement of our lives, the deep places.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I want to talk a bit about the books that you've written, Liminal Reality and Transformational Power. And, and you were the editor of the anthology, Neither Here Nor There, the Many Voices of Liminality. And then as well as co-author of Crossing Thresholds, a Practical Theology of Liminality. And then the liminal, so you've written several books on this. And so, can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. So one of the earliest books was based on my doctoral dissertation. That's Liminal Reality and Transformational Power. And that was published, and it's more in the scholarly vein, and people accessed it as they started researching liminality. Later, I had a really fun project where I edited the anthology that you mentioned, Neither Here Nor There. And it was great fun to identify and edit the work of 18 authors, international authors, writing from many different points of view. And so that's been a really, really fun project. The Crossing Thresholds you mentioned is actually a theological work, and that's a Practical Theology of Liminality. So that would be more for professors, theological students, pastors, chaplains, spiritual directors, kind of in that vein. And then the one I'm working on right now is kind of kicking all the doors out, and it's called the Liminal Loop, 12 Tales of Transformation. It is an anthology again, and I am most excited about anthologies right now, a collection of authors, at this point in my life, because I have a conviction that the truth that we seek can only be known by the contribution of many voices that circle that issue.
Yeah.
And it is by combining those many voices that we can touch on the centrality of that common truth that we're trying to get to, whether it be liminality or anything else. So that intersectionality that takes place when you have many voices addressing an issue actually creates kind of more knowledge, more wisdom, the kind that you wouldn't have had unless they came together. So it's one of my thrills these days to assemble a group of very diverse people to address something. And since liminality is my thing, I gather them around that. Sure. And it's fun.
I'll bet.
So that will be published later this year. It's in process as we're speaking. So
yeah, it says here on your website, released in the late fall of 2021.
Right.
So, 12 tales of transformation, that's got to be pretty hefty. That's got to be pretty wonderful. What I do is all about helping people transform themselves anyway. So, transformation is something, and I agree what you said about it's like the basis of literature. Something, a character's walking along, something happens, and then something comes out of it. So that is basically the very definition. And the liminality is starting to really, really, I don't know, it's tying some things together for me. So I appreciate that.
And we live our life in stories. We live our life in narratives.
We do.
So that's liminality is best understood as kind of forms of narratives on the outside, in our social life, in our individual life, and on the inside of us. The kind of stories that we live and the kind of stories we rewrite as a product of passing through that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. It is, isn't it? Oh, very interesting. Now, so you're also a pastor, I see.
Right. So I served for decades as a parish pastor, and I've retired from that now, and I'm enjoying the dessert after a long mini-course meal by teaching in the Honors College. Imagine the passage one makes from all of the administrative roles that you might have in a religious community, and the teaching roles and counseling roles and everything else you have to do. Everything from the grand to the petty. And so imagine all of that and ending up teaching honors college undergraduates, just helping them traverse through the most interesting intellectual terrain that could be found, and watching their bright-faced selves interact with that. This is like I said, a rich dessert after a long meal. It's just such a thrill.
Oh,
such a thrill.
Such a thrill. I taught college myself for a few years, and it was just so rewarding, so rich. It's
right.
certainly not at the level you're teaching, but still, it's a wonderful life and a great dessert. I love that. And you also use EFT, the emotional freedom techniques. How did you get into that?
Well, a long time ago, my wife was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh.
And as we explored for alternative therapies and ways to address her physical life and her emotional life, her spiritual life, we came upon various forms of energy medicine, energy healing.
Yes.
And one of those that we discovered was EFT. So it will be tapping on the embedded emotions that we carry in our bodies. So very somatic, very emotion-based, and releasing those.
Mm-hmm.
And in the release of those, then finding one's emotional freedom, and actually the body, kind of as Vandercook has said, the body tells the score. The way that the body releases all those is connected to our emotional life and how that releases it.
And now I just wanted to send a shout out to some of our supporters: Julian, John, James, Marissa, Charlotte, Pauline, Becky, and Louise. Thank you all so much for keeping this podcast going. If you'd like to support this podcast too, please hit the like, follow, or subscribe button, or give us 5 stars or a positive review wherever you're listening, and share this with your friends. You can also subscribe to Radiate You, our private Facebook group, for bonus content, including classes and meditations. Another way to support our podcast is to go to radiatewellnesscommunity.com/podcast and click on the Donate Now button. However you support us, we greatly appreciate it, and thanks for listening.
And so as we discovered that, I thought it was really powerful. And so I pursued it myself. And so I spent the years necessary in training and supervision to become a certified practitioner of emotional freedom techniques, EFT. And so I really connected that, joined that with a lot of other modalities. Pretty eclectic in my approach to working with people, and that was one that I ended up using a lot. And then matrix re-imprinting along with it.
What the heck is that?
Okay, so it's interesting, we're talking about stories, right? We're talking about narratives. The matrix re-imprinting is a method that we help people go into the deep memories of their psyche,
Mm-hmm.
and we go to very particular places where trauma may have occurred,
Right.
or some terrible crisis emerged, and it is still haunting them, but it's still acting, it's still contributing to their duress. And we go into the scene, and through a set of different kinds of techniques, help the person interact with the characters in that scene, often in ways they could not when they were younger, with the understanding that we actually can go into the past, and if not modifying historical events, we can modify the way that we interact with the characters in our memory and ourselves.
Mm.
And as we do that, people themselves discover what they need, the resources that they need in those deep places.
Mm-hmm.
And so often we can use the imagination. And if there is, let's say, a young person that has had a terrible conflict with a parent, for example,
Mm-hmm.
or two of the parents, you can freeze them in the scene so that they feel safe. You can create plexiglass between them and the parents, and you can say something like this, because the ego self, that would be the present aged adult who is doing this work, goes in and interacts with their own child.
Yeah.
We call the echo, which would be the energetic self.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would be interacting with, like I would be talking to my younger self, because I become ultimately the shaman, the counselor, or the priest that is going to help my own younger self heal. And so everything that is needed is already there. And so anyone who does matrix work would ask a question like, what do you need us to bring into the picture right now?
Mm-hmm.
And we would ask the echo, that is the energetic younger self, what do you need right now?
Mm-hmm.
And we actually listen to the echo. So the older ego self listens, and the younger energetic self always provides the answer. I've never not had that. And they'll say, I need to have my grandmother come in and sit on the bed beside me. No problem. Let's bring grandma in right now. And then we ask, is she there yet? Yes, she's there. Where is she? She's on the bed beside me. What would you like right now? I'd like to sit in her lap. Go ahead and get in her lap. Then after a while we'd say, what do you want to say to grandma? And the echo, the younger self, would say, I don't want to say anything. I just want to listen to her heartbeat. Okay, let's just listen to her heartbeat right now. So all of this is provided. And sometimes people will bring in angels, and sometimes superheroes, and sometimes Jesus, and sometimes their deceased parent.
Right.
I just, all I need is my mom. Oh, well, we can arrange that. Let's find the most beautiful place in your memory that you've ever been. Where is that? Describe it to me. Oh, it's on the shores of a lake with blowing grasses, and I had some beautiful memories. Well, let's go there because I think that your mother can meet you there. And so we go there and we wait, and pretty soon mom comes along, whole, restored, renewed, healthy, and there is this encounter between the one that we lost and missed so much and need so much, coming and being reunited. And so there is this healing moment in this beautiful place. And then a person can leave that place knowing they can go back anytime, and they have equipped themselves on the inside. So this is the most liminal of interior spaces. This is the liminal interior space of the psyche itself. This is where one goes to commune with the spirit, with the deepest things of life, the things that have mattered most to us, our loves and our losses. And that's where we go to find what we need. And then we can come up and out of the matrix, this special place within our psyche, to our ordinary present day time and space experience, renewed, made new. We've passed through, we've received what we need, and then we become a new person. It's kind of a death and a resurrection that takes place. It's a pattern of that, or a model of that.
Is this a form of hypnosis?
It's not technically hypnosis, but I would have to say there are hypnotic elements to it. I think there are hypnotic elements to EFT and the tapping as well. Because of the sheer use of rhythm on the meridian points in the body. There's a kind of hypnotic effect. And in fact, that is one of the reasons that difficult emotions can be surfaced more quickly and more easily, because there is this kind of repetitive, rhythmic tapping that's on the meridians.
Because it sounds very much like much of the work that I do as a hypnotherapist.
And so how would you start with getting one into the hypnotic state in your practice?
By visualizing, by imagery, right? Getting into the right side of the brain.
Yes.
Right? And getting the person to relax through imagery and describing a beautiful place, as a matter of fact. And
this sounds very parallel.
Very parallel, right?
That's right.
And it's incredibly healing, because the mind can create anything.
Right. And some of the deepest experiences of the traditional spiritualities have used these same techniques, like over the centuries. The visualization of deep stories.
Yes.
Taking a journey. That kind of thing is really common.
Oh, yes, it is. Absolutely. Visualization is so key. Olympic athletes and professional athletes use visualization to create the outcome they want.
Right.
Right. So I understand why you got into EFT through your wife's illness. But how did you discover and get into this matrix repatterning?
I had a friend who was an EFT practitioner who used Matrix and told me about upcoming trainings. And I didn't know much about it at the time, but I explored it and I thought, yeah, I want to do that. And so I just went ahead and pursued that as well. And I have used that a lot.
Have
Um,
you really?
yes, I have. I've used that a lot. And it it has become kind of the quick, down and dirty way to get to the deepest issues quickly.
Yes. I agree.
It often works when nothing else does.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons that people refer to me, because they've heard about it and they might be working with a client and they kind of get stuck. They kind of feel like they're in a plateau, and they'll refer a person to me for a few sessions or more just to kind of move to the next level. And then they might return to whatever their therapy was they were using
Mhm.
after we do that work.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I've also worked conjointly with therapists, so two of us working with one client, sometimes back before the pandemic, in the same room working together. Um, you know,
Right. And let me bring this up, or let's bring this up, is that not only are you a professor and an expert in the subject of liminality, you're also a practitioner.
I am. And
Yeah.
I do that every week. So I will always have between 4 to 5 clients a week,
Mm-hmm.
which is just about what I want right now with everything else I'm doing. And I basically just take people only by referral now
Sure.
uh, from from other people, and it works just about right for me now.
Is that more with the matrix work, or is it more with the EFT work?
It's both. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's both. Hmm.
Right, right. And there's an amazing practice there in Colombia.
Yes.
Tell us about this practice that you're with.
So that's Kindred Collective.
Hmm.
Um, Kindred's a remarkable creation. It is a gathering of a variety of therapists and practitioners in the healing arts under the umbrella of the collective, and we each person is independent and autonomous within the practice. They manage their own caseloads. We have a space sharing arrangement. When we are using bricks and mortar, we're returning to more of that now. And yet we collaborate on a number of things. I know that there in the collective, there are people that do body work
Hmm.
in a way that I don't, and that, do therapeutic massage and all this kind of thing, who work specifically with conjoint family therapy, things that I don't do. Um, so it's wonderful to have a community of people that you're with, that you feel so fortunate to be able to cross refer to. And you can cover for each other, like if people are
Yeah.
gone for vacations. I took a client from one of my kindred colleagues for just 3 weeks or so
Mhm.
while my colleague was gone, and just kind of covered with the understanding that the client would return to my colleague when she returned, and that's always so nice.
That does sound quite wonderful.
It's the hallmark of kindred in Colombia is child play therapy. So it's a lot of child therapies. So there are a lot of trained, licensed child therapists there. But not only that, they also work with adults and adolescents. And
Yes. In fact, Kate Weir from the collective is going to be on the podcast as well.
I am so glad because she was the founder. This is Kate's brainchild.
Right.
This is her dream baby.
Right. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to talk about play and the importance of play. And I'm just excited. Yes, no, this
she's actually going to be writing one of the chapters of the Liminal Loop for me.
Oh.
And she's going to be write about liminality and play therapy, which is fascinating. So she's which is a model that it's just hand in glove, because the consulting room, the child play therapy room, is the liminal domain, and the therapist is the liminal guide on the inside of that liminal container. And so that's what her chapter is going to be about.
Oh, that's wonderful. So needed. And of course, the childhood is perhaps the ultimate liminal state.
Yes, it is. It is.
So much of who we are is formed in that way. Mm-hmm. And here in Kansas City, I share an office suite with a child therapist as well.
Okay.
Yes. So, just understanding these different passages, the teenage years, another trope of liminality.
Right. At Kindred, I'm kind of the one who people turn to do a lot of the pre-adolescent and adolescent males. I tend to work more with them, not only, but more.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I think because of life passages. It is a clear, distinct passage. And sometimes, if I could speak in mythological terms, and if I could speak in rites of passage terms, the rites of passage for young males, not always, not exclusively, but a lot of the time, has to do with a passage and re-identification with a kind of rising male energy in adolescence. A lot of it has to do with hormonal change. A lot of it has to do with identity shifts. We can't be too absolute because people are always unique, but a lot of it has to do with that. And so to have a mentor / liminal guide who is kind of walking alongside that rites of passage is an important one. And it parallels the kind of rites of passage that took place in pre-agrarian, pre-industrial societies. But in our modern society, we don't have a whole lot of equivalence for that.
Right. We do.
A lot of times we have lost a lot of that kind of identification and kind of accompaniment during that kind of passage. So it ends up being done in therapeutic veins sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes we just need to have a Sherpa or a guide.
Exactly. I like the Sherpa. That is really good. That's right.
And help us schlep our stuff.
That's right.
And get up that mountain. And so, I was just thinking about how the role of someone, maybe not being a guide, but a role model, someone who's been through that passage before.
Right.
How important would that be?
That's right. I think that really helps. On the other side of that, I'm always amazed that regardless of your gender, regardless of your age, if you're the right guide and you are chosen by the one needing the guide and the match is right, great healing and passage can take place regardless. I'm thinking right now of a person I have worked with for about a year who is a trans person who's transitioned from, she's actually, this person is gender fluid and has transitioned kind of from woman to the person that she is. She's lesbian. And I'm a cisgender straight male.
Right.
And you would think that I wouldn't have anything to offer to a person like this, except that I have spent time accompanying other persons making similar journeys.
Right.
My personal experience does not parallel that, except that I'm a human being, except I know something about sexual identity and sexual tension and identification and gender roles. And I know something about making great big passages, and I know something about feeling like I'm not at one in my own skin for a variety of reasons. So there's enough parallel there for identification.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think, though, that I'd be the person. In fact, I didn't think I'd be the person. It's like, why does this work? I don't even know why this works.
Right.
You know? But if it's the right kind of spiritual, emotional match, if the attitudes, the mutual respect is in the right place, then magic can happen.
The trust.
And trust.
Rapport. Interesting. No, that's a really good point. I mean, there are not just the usual transitions that we have, but those who are wanting to identify with a new role and a new gender and step into a new sexuality. That's huge.
It's a remarkably powerful passage. And it is, like we've been talking about, and in all the classic literature, it's fraught with a certain kind of danger when you make those kind of passages.
Absolutely.
There's a social danger. There's an emotional risk that takes place. And it can be shattering, and it can be life-giving and terrifying, and all those things at the same time.
I'm reminded of Queer Eye, the show.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And there was one episode where they helped a trans man to just fully blossom into who he was meant to be, and having the driver's license being a huge thing, and having that match his identity.
Exactly.
His markers as well. And just this little card made all the difference.
Right.
Right.
We live in this heteronormative culture, and it's very difficult to negotiate that culture if you're not part of that mainstream.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I know children who are fluid, I think you could say. Just fluid and gender fluid, preference fluid, et cetera, et cetera. And it's hard. It's not easy on them. But we come to the world at a time where this is more and more accepted, and this is more and more becoming normal and being normalized. So it's wonderful that you get to help people move through that with the work that you do. That is fantastic. Yeah. And so I would like to point our listeners to your website, which is the Liminality Project.org, theliminalityproject.org. What all do you have on that site?
Well, there are several things. There is a general description of what liminality is, called the Liminality Primer.
Yep.
That's a nice one. That will give you the down and dirty. It'll give you the historical backgrounds and definitions.
Yeah.
There's a blog, and that has a whole variety of people that have contributed over time, writings to that. There's a resources page, which has a variety of videos and other materials on there. So it's just kind of a meeting place for people interested in liminality, and always a way to contact the curator with questions, or if someone would like to contribute something, there's ways to do that too.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I love how on your website you've got this beautiful spiral staircase going down. Another
liminal symbol.
Exactly. Another symbol of, moving from one place to another and the between place. Now that's wonderful. Anything that you'd like to leave us with? Anything that you feel like we haven't covered, it hasn't been said?
I think that we need to leave people with a sense of hope. And I firmly believe that no matter how difficult the passage is, whether it be an interior passage or exterior passage, whether it's one that's been chosen, a pathway that's chosen, or you were pushed into it through no choice of your own, there are riches to be found in that dark interval. And take patience and courage to find what that is for you, because it will be important, something that you didn't even know that you needed, that you found.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. And just like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, there's that point there where everything becomes goo.
Right. And what is it? Exactly. What is it then?
That everything you thought you were has to dissolve before it can reemerge.
Right. And does the caterpillar know that it's becoming a butterfly? No, it doesn't. It's just in the goo, right? we don't really know what we're becoming either, not exactly.
No.
But we are.
Right. And we never stop becoming that.
Right.
Right. So perhaps in that way, our entire life is liminality.
A large arc, a liminal arc. Right.
Liminal arc. I like that. Yeah. From non-physical energy to physical energy, back to non-physical energy.
Yes.
And we're in that place between.
Right.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Tim. Thank you for sitting and talking with me.
It's been a great pleasure. I enjoyed it very much.
Radiate Wellness is a community of holistic and alternative healers and consultants based in the Kansas City area, dedicated to helping you create spiritual, energetic, and physical well-being. To learn more about our practitioners, services, classes, and events, or to schedule an appointment, visit us at radiatewellnesscommunity.com.